much for joining us for the 2021 Legislative Panel. This year we have two Johnson County Senators. We have Senator Dinah Sykes and Senator Ethan Corson, so welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a set of questions that speak directly to a lot of issues that impact our network and the people that we serve. And I'm going to leave some time at the end for if anybody wants to ask any questions to you two as well. All right. So without further ado, let's get started. Very first question is, what are your goals for the upcoming session? Senator Sykes, do you want to take that one first?
Sure. So we are redistricting, which redrawing the boundaries for Senate districts, House districts, and Board of Education and our congressional districts. So wanting to get that done earlier rather than later and make sure we have proper representation and that we're making sure all of those that you are actually represented by someone who is listening to your concerns. That's one of the big issues in the news over the last couple of days. We've heard about the governor's plan for the elimination of sales tax on food. Senator Corson and I were actually just in Leavenworth at one of those visits, really excited about that and hoping we can also pass that early. I know the more that we can save on those tax dollars from our food is more nutritious foods that we can put in our tummies. So really excited about that. One more for me personally is been working on a piece of legislation for childcare tax credits for employers, kind of helping, workforce is a huge issue. One of those things that I believe is actual childcare availability. And this would help employers get a little bit of a tax credit if they were incentivizing and helping their employees. So those are kind of my three main issues. I'm sure as the session starts, other things will pop up, but going in, those are my three main issues that I hope we can get past the finish line.
Thank you very much. Senator Corson?
Well, I would really agree with Leader Sykes on all three of those things. So I would very much echo what she said on those issues. Two others I would add, I'm going to be working on legislation to raise the minimum wage. We have not raised the minimum wage in Kansas since 2009. And so I would just challenge anybody to go through a week and think about all of the economic decisions that we make and think about what costs the same as it did in 2009. And one of the things that the pandemic has shown a spotlight on is on the critical and frankly, the really heroic work that's done every day by these workers, the folks who stock our shelves, who care for our children, and who do so many other tasks that are critical to keeping our economy and our communities running. So I really think that that needs to be a focus this session. And I obviously couldn't leave without mentioning Medicaid expansion. This would help the IDD community, but it would also create jobs. It would be a boost for our economy. It would provide access to affordable health care for 150,000 Kansans. And with all of the additional federal incentives, I think the real question is not, can we afford to do Medicaid expansion? It's really, how can Kansas possibly not take this opportunity to do Medicaid expansion because of all those benefits?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. These next questions. So we have two. So you guys have been involved in the legislature for two totally different amounts of time. Senator Corson, you're a bit newer. Senator Sykes, you've been in the legislature a little bit longer. So really interested in your perspective on what's the most important thing that you've learned so far. So for Senator Sykes, as somebody who's a bit more seasoned, what's the most important thing you've learned so far?
Okay, well, first I want to say Senator Corson is a treasure to have in the legislature. He is a rock star and doing great things. So I can't imagine all of the things that he's going to be doing after he served, like when he's in his fifth year, which I just finished my fifth year. The most important thing, and it continues to be, is listening to people. As legislators, we can have great ideas, but it's talking to the people who those policies affect, because we don't always think about the implications of that. So that's why I love events like this, because we get to hear from you and how policies that, it may have the best intention ever, but if we don't think about how that affects your day-to-day life, I never will forget talking to someone in the cafeteria at JCDS about doors for handicapped people, because like we think, oh, we're putting all of these in and it's great, and they're like, it doesn't really help because the button is too close. And so it's those little things that we know are so important, but actually, how does it affect our constituents' lives?
Fantastic insight. Thank you. Senator Corson?
One of the things that's helped me is just really learning to feel comfortable asking for help from my colleagues. I think of my role as a senator as really trying to learn about these issues as much as I can, so I can do the best possible job of representing my constituents. And so I really learned to not be shy about going to others. I'm really privileged, as Leader Sykes mentioned, to be part of a really great caucus, and they just have a wealth of experience. And so for me, it's been important to just not be shy about asking them for help. Senator Sykes is doing such a tremendous job as our Democratic leader, and is someone that I consider a real mentor. And I just have no compunction when we're on the Senate floor of just going back to her desk and just asking her, like, hey, what's going on? What do you think about this? My office mate, to give you another example, Senator Petty, she just has a wealth of experience when it comes to issues about education and healthcare and many other things. So I'm always popping my head into her office and asking her questions about those issues, so I can really benefit from the experience of my colleagues. So for me, I think not having an ego about that sort of thing has been really, really helpful, because there's so many great people in our caucus that I can learn from. And I've really appreciated that opportunity and tried to take advantage of it.
Thank you very much. And it's so great to hear you guys be so supportive of each other and build each other up. I think a lot of times that we forget that people who are in the legislature, they're colleagues, and you guys are often friends. And it's always nice to hear positivity coming out of the legislature. So thank you very much for that. So my next question, I want to get to workforce challenges. This was something that when we were asking people in service what they wanted to ask you about, what's important to them, this is one of their topics as well. And this is something that every day IDD providers are really having to deal with. We're having at JCDS and at other providers all around the state in Johnson County, really nationwide, a hard time finding people to apply to and being able to retain staff. We're not the only industry, of course. It's pretty much across the country that there's a workforce crisis. So as you guys get to work next year, what ideas are you planning or are you supporting to address this workforce crisis?
Well, I think this is just an overall, conversation that we really need to dig in, because it's not, like you said, it's not just the IDD supports, it's across the board. And a lot of these frontline workers, they have, been through the mill, and, we need to show support and all of that. It goes to Senator Corson's, wages, making sure we're paying. I was at an event in Arizona, and we were talking about workforce, but it's really making sure employees feel like they're wanted and those in their work environment. And I think some of that can be childcare, the Medicaid reimbursement. I mean, these are all issues. So it's not really, one piece of the puzzle. It's a lot of different factors. But I think it's, having those conversations with providers. And, I have several of my constituents who are providers, and, they don't make a lot of money. And it's really a hard job. And, I know the burnout can be easy. And when you can go work at, a fast food restaurant or Target and have, less stress. I mean, we have to address these and make sure that we're providing livable wages. But that's also the thing then for, the people who are receiving those services, making sure that so it's a complicated, problem, but I think we're seeing with the pandemic and some of those issues that maybe some of these topics are bubbling up and we're able to address them from multiple areas. And hopefully that's something that as we come out of the pandemic that we've learned. And, it's not just the wage, but it's all of those different issues. And I wish it was an easy answer and I wish there was like a simple bill, but it's so complex and we just have to take into consideration. And I think that's why talking to, people who are on the front lines who are dealing with these to find out what their issues are, whether it's childcare or, reducing sales tax on food. I mean, there's lots of these things that can play together. So if you have great ideas, send them to us.
We definitely do. So you'll definitely be hearing from us on some of the ideas that we have that we think could help the workforce crisis.
Wonderful.
I'm a member of the Corrections and Juvenile Justice Committee, and we had 3 days of meetings 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that we heard from our corrections community is about their workforce challenges. So I think it is something we're seeing in a variety of different employment spaces. And I'm really appreciative of Senator Sykes's leadership on the childcare piece, because my wife and I are both working parents. So this is something that we're really living as the parents of a 2.5-year-old. And I think has become a real barrier for entry for a lot of folks who do want to enter the workforce. But the reality is that you can't do that if you don't know that you have safe, reliable, and affordable childcare. And this is something that's been borne disproportionately by women. And I really think that we as a state need to make it so that folks who want to re-enter or enter the workforce have the ability to secure that childcare. I read an article that the cost of an infant now costs more than in-state tuition at KU or K-State. Mm-hmm. And so I think that this is something that we need to really focus on. Additionally, we have a committee, the SPARK committee, that is in charge of how we spend the federal relief money. I think we should take a look at a state subsidy for childcare workers to try to bring their wages up, because Leader Sykes was absolutely right that this is a really stressful, high demand job. And if you're able to make that same wage doing something without that stress, it's hard to do and to keep those folks. And I also do just think that this will take some time. We had a major and really unprecedented disruption to the world economy. And I do think it's just going to take some time for everything to resettle.
Thank you very much. And you guys are right. It's a very multifaceted problem. And we have found that there are so many systemic issues that directly impact our ability to hire and retain employees. Mm-hmm. And when you have a lot of turnover, that really does impact the individuals in service, because they need to be able to rely on their staff who know them and they can trust. So it's very important to us that this is addressed. So thank you very much for that. Still kind of on the staffing topic, I want to talk about Medicaid reimbursement rates. This is something that we talk about every single year. We'll probably be talking about it for years and years to come. Medicaid reimbursement rates, they're too low, and they've been too low forever. And we've had some success, but that success didn't nearly catch up for the years and years and years where we were not getting increases in Medicaid reimbursement rates. So as legislation is put forward and as money requests have come forward next year to raise the Medicaid reimbursement rates, is that something that you both intend on supporting?
Absolutely. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the last increase was 2 years ago, and it was, a little bit, but I mean, we can always continue that. So I have always supported that. And, we look at Governor Kelly has had a very stabilized budget, and we are having some increased funding, which helps us be able to address some of these issues. So absolutely we'll be supporting that and would love to help you all get that message out.
Yeah, I would just echo that and what Leader Sykes said. You know, we're in the strongest fiscal position in our state's history, which seems a little bit incongruous with a lot of the workforce issues and other things, but we have had a lot of success in attracting new businesses and new capital investment. And so now is a time where we are able to make these really high return investments in things like increasing the Medicaid reimbursement rate. So.
Yeah, thank you very much. We were supposed to get an increase in 2020, but we all know what happened in 2020. So
Yeah.
the governor had to make some cuts, and unfortunately, that was on the chopping block there. In 21, we had a bit more success with that, but going forward, though, like I said, it just doesn't make up for all of the years where there was no or just too small of an increase. So we really appreciate your guys' support, and we'll continue to advocate. People in service and other providers will continue to advocate, but your advocacy matters a lot as well. So thank you.
Well, and I think that also, I mean, as we've talked about, we brought businesses here and we are strong. And I think that when we are investing in Kansans, whether that's our IDD community or others, it makes it a great place that you want to be in, because you know that we care about our citizens. And so I think that only helps us as we're trying to attract more businesses.
Absolutely. Thank you. And when we talk about, investing into our community, investing into our people, Kansas is an employment first state. So when we're providing services to people with disabilities, we present employment first as an option. Do you want to work? What resources do you need in order to work? But there are barriers to being able to be employed. And some of those barriers are that if you make too much money, you lose access to some of your state benefits. And so that can be a detriment to people who they would like to take on extra hours. They have the ability to take on extra hours to go after higher paying jobs, but those extra hours and higher paying jobs is not going to offset the cost if they lose some of their other benefits. So do you have any ideas or planning on proposing anything that could address that barrier to employment for people who do receive those services?
I don't have anything tangible that introduced, but this has always been a concern. How do we get over that cliff and wanting to make sure? And I know I've talked to it with childcare providers, so they get a 25-cent an hour raise, but then they lose their subsidies for childcare. So they really are taking 2 steps back, even though they just got a raise. So I think that's something that we have to address, and it's always questions that I bring up in those committees. But and I would be interested in solutions that you all may have. I actually, one of my friends from college is the commissioner for IDD in Tennessee. And so I was actually with him last week, and I was like, I would love to, have a conversation about what you're doing and things that you see. But it's always, how do we protect people from that cliff? Because we want people to be productive and participants in society. But when there is that disadvantage, we need to address that.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, we always hear about the virtues of work and the need to get people in the workforce. So we need to look at any areas where we're actually disincentivizing work. And I would really welcome, with respect to the disability community, I would really welcome learning more about how this issue specifically impacts that community, so I could take that information back to my colleagues this session.
Thank you very much. And so, as I said, this event is being recorded. It's going to be shared on social media and all of our digital platforms. And I really hope that your guys' request for more information is heard by advocates and people across the state who can then reach out to you and give you their perspective. Because at JCDS, we're always ready to give you our ideas and our perspective, but we're not the only ones. So anybody else who watches this, who wants to reach out, we highly recommend that increased support there. So thank you. Still on the same topic of some of the systemic issues that we're having, the wait list. I'm sure you guys know about the wait list. I've spoken to both of you about it. The wait list for IDD services in Kansas is now almost 10 years long. It was definitely exacerbated by COVID. It's only getting longer, unfortunately. And so what can the legislature do, or what is the legislature planning to do to address this excessively long wait list?
Yeah, I mean, that is a reoccurring question. As both Senator Corson and I are both advocates for expanding Medicaid. And, I think bringing those federal dollars in will help us, with making sure we have the workers, the workforce, the computer software to do all of these things, and providers, but also that reimbursement rate is part of that as well. And I will say, some of our colleagues have used that as a reason why not to expand Medicaid. And I think they're just, trying to put a wedge issue in when we know if we had, those extra federal dollars, that would help us address that. Again, would love your thoughts and recommendations on that, because it's something that we always talk about, but if we don't have the spaces and people wanting to provide those services because of pay rates or things, so we have to address that as well. And honestly, I think Medicaid expansion does help with that wait list.
Yeah, I just agree completely. I would also, again, going back to an earlier discussion we had, given our strong fiscal position as a state, I think we really need to look at these really high return investments and use our fiscal position as now being the time to make these critical investments. And I think that is doubly important in Johnson County because we border Jackson County. And so we have that additional competition from just over the state line for workers and things of that nature. So I think it's doubly important that we be really strategic and make these critical investments now that we have, because of Governor Kelly's leadership, now that we have the fiscal resources and the strength to do that. I think it's really a time to really be excited about Kansas, because we have a real opportunity to make investments in a lot of these critical areas that we've been focused on for a long time.
And I think that's, if we had a system that worked so we know that there's a wait list. So even if you're not ready to be on that, you're like, okay, I want to be on this list because I know it's going to take me 5 years, 10 years. So how do we eliminate that so that when someone needs to be on there, they're applying at the right time too? So that's also a conversation that I've had with like younger individuals that know that they're going to need this as they get older, but feeling like they have to apply early because of that wait.
Yeah, and we really encourage people to get on the wait list as soon as possible because the wait list is so long.
Right.
And we see so many people who end up graduating from high school and now they don't have access to the full array of services that they may need. So you can get on as early as the age of 5. So we try to talk to parents and school districts to get people on.
Yeah, and you understand that, but if we had a good working system where you could apply when you're closer to needing that service, what would that do to our wait list too? So I completely understand, and yes, plan early and get on there. But if we had a system that worked seamlessly, then that could eliminate some of those people on the list.
Yeah, ideally, that would be great if people could get on when they actually need it and didn't have the excessive wait. And just to one point that you made, how some people will say that if we expand Medicaid, that's going to somehow hurt the people in service. And I just want to say that's not true.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what I've seen, some conversations trying to pit people against each other. And it's not a zero-sum game. We are helping all people by expanding. So.
And I have down to my last question here. And this is another question that our self-advocacy group wanted to make sure we got in there. which is what can we do to avoid future lockdowns from COVID-19? That was very hard on everybody. And we had a lot of people who received day services, who really enjoyed coming to the Elmore Center, going out, going to restaurants, having the same sort of fun activities in the community we all enjoy. And then one day we're all sent home, and it was really, really difficult. So how can we avoid having to go through that again?
I think we have learned a lot. Hopefully this is a once in a lifetime pandemic, but we have to follow the science. But I think we learned a lot about how we can protect ourselves, vaccines, wearing masks. I'll be the first to say I'm so tired of my mask, but I will continue to wear it if it's helping those who can't get a vaccine or things like that. And I know, as Senate Democrats, we have always been, how do we maintain our economy and keep growing and have those businesses open, but also, look at the science and what is the public health best interest protecting everyone. But I think we have learned a lot in the last, 18 months? I don't even know, I've lost count now. But I think there's those simple things that we can do and realize, honestly, as I've been at different groups, kind of setting a plan for the next pandemic. Hopefully we don't have one, but what have we learned? How do we prepare, having PPP available, mask, whatever that may be. And I think having a good playbook for the next, which I hope is, Senator Corson, when his son is in his 40s, I'm hoping, but, I think learning from what we have, and, we didn't know at the time, but now we've learned mask help, social distancing, vaccinations. These are all critical things to helping us move forward.
I would just add to that. I mean, for me, in the conversations I've had, I really tried to I think keeping the main thing. And to me, it's that we have a safe, effective, and widely available vaccine. And that folks getting vaccinated is our way back to normal. And I think there's a universal desire among all Kansans in all parts of the state, of all different political affiliations, to get back to that normal. And so my conversations have really been, the more folks that we get vaccinated, the closer we become to making that a reality. I think we're all anxious to not have to wear masks and things like that. So when I'm talking to friends, neighbors, constituents, I really stress the efficacy of the vaccine, because I think that is our fastest path back to normalcy.
Well, thank you guys very, very much, both of you, for taking this time to come and talk to us. We invited all Johnson County senators to participate, and I know that you were super swamped. So thank you so much for joining us. And now I want to turn it over to any of our guests. If you guys have any questions, maybe not as intense as the question I asked, but if you think that you've always wanted to know, this is now the time.
I'd be glad to ask a question. But first, again, thank you both for joining us. Thank you for what you do to support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I appreciated the conversation this afternoon and focus on our workforce issues, which are so critical right now. And Melissa talked some about the waiting list, but without having a sufficient workforce, it's really hard to address that waiting list topic. One of the questions I had, it sounds like from the interim committee on IDD and home and community-based services that there'll be a task force. Are either of you, do you know what that composition will look like, or will either of you be participating in that task force? So our hope is that could generate some potential solutions to some of these issues.
I am not familiar. I have not been following all of the interim committees because we have like an interim committee for everything right now. And so I will follow up on that. I am assuming that I would have an appointment to that. So, but I need to look at the makeup and see what that is.
Great, thank you.
Right, do we have any other questions while we have the senators here? All right, well, thank you again. And I hope you guys have a fantastic holiday. I really look forward to the work that the legislature is going to be doing next year. Definitely expect to hear more from us with the things that would definitely make the system and the network better throughout Kansas and in Johnson County. And as always, as topics come across your desk that you think you need information from us, do not hesitate to reach out to myself or to Chad, and we will be able to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and have a very happy holiday.
Thanks
All
for
right.
having us, and thanks for
Yes.
thanks for the work you did.